Hey, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Mitch Taco Bell. I'm your host with Tall Tales with Taco. Wherever you may be from coast to coast and around this world, greetings. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I got to tell you, this is a very special occasion to me. Through my career, one of the biggest highlights I've ever had is working with an organization called Skyball, or for, I should say, an event called Skyball that was hosted by American Airlines and the Fort Worth Air Power Council for many, many years here in the Dallas Fort Worth area. And one of the things that I was in charge of was helping take care of our Medal of Honor recipients, which to me was the highest honor that a Marine, especially, could get. Now, growing up as a Marine, I had only met one recipient, and that was when I was a second lieutenant, and I met Barney Barnum. Colonel Barnum came to our TBS as a young second lieutenant, and it just in awe. I mean, the chance of meeting a living recipient, well, if you get a chance, you probably ought to go buy a lotto ticket because there's only so many, I believe just about 72, 73 living recipients at this time. And we just lost Woody Williams. So if you get to meet one, buy a lotto ticket. If you get to meet 32, buy a ton of lotto tickets. And in my experience, I was dealing with up to 32 living recipients who would attend the banquet and the event, and we would take over an aircraft hangar with 4,000 people, black tie, uniforms. The gala was just incredible. But one of the folks that I got to meet that I really fell in love with was Hersey. And Hersey would come out from Gallup, New Mexico to join us. It was one of those events that kind of, as you sat down and spoke to the soft, kind, soft spoken man, you got a great story and a great insight into his life. For most people, they probably haven't seen this, but I highly recommend if you can get a copy of Forged in Fire, and it's written by Vincent Okamoto, who was a lieutenant in Vietnam, and he had taken basically the story of Hershey and his friend Joe Anello, put it together, so you got a perspective not so much of the actual action of their time in Korea, but more of the friendship and the bond that they had and that they had developed and that they needed to rely on each other to be able to survive the brutal battles that they had in Korea. So tonight, without any further ado, I would like to bring on Hiroshi Hershey Miyamura. And Hershey, how are you tonight, sir?
Thank you, Taco. I will be 97 in this coming October.
97 years old. I got to say, you look great for 97. And I want to thank Clay, who is off camera, and your daughter for helping us, Kelly, helping us get this organized. I wanted to sit and talk to you. We were talking off air about going into the military back in the 40s and growing up in Gallup, which I'm very impressed with reading the book. They didn't succumb to the pressure of discrimination by rounding up the Japanese heritage citizens and putting them in concentration camps. So you were able not to have to endure that horrific um, black stain that we have on our heritage, but you still, as a proud citizen, wanted to serve the country. But you were telling me you weren't able to because of the rating because of the Japanese heritage, right? You
Well,
couldn't volunteer.
when my classmates all said, let's volunteer for one of the services, I said, fine. And when we went down to the offices of the different branches, and I was told right off that I could not volunteer for the U.S. services because of my
Hmm.
being a Japanese American, even though I was born here.
So you had to wait for the draft, but when you were
They told me
drafted,
that I had to wait for the draft. I could
right?
not volunteer.
Well, when you were drafted, you were actually part of the
I was a
442nd.
student and working for the Ford agency as an auto mechanic. I learned from my cousin.
Hmm.
And being that he was short, the owner of the Ford agency was short of help, he asked me to come and work because he knew I was being taught by one of his own mechanics, and that was my cousin, and he taught me the best he could. And when most of the mechanics left for the service, I was hired as a line mechanic.
Oh, wow. And when you were drafted, you actually got to join the 442nd, which
Well,
go for broke. Those
that's a
guys.
long story, sir, because I didn't know a thing about the 442nd, and there was no 442nd when I heard about it. I mean, when I joined the unit, but I did hear about it when I was drafted and sent to Camp Island, Florida, for 17 weeks of basic training. And
Mhm.
that's it. We finished the training, that would be two companies of us, Nisei boys. We were told to report to Camp Shelby, Mississippi, and that's where we learned that there was a 442, a regimental combat team made up of all Japanese American soldiers, with the exception that the Anglos were mostly the officers in the unit.
Did you ever think that you would be going over to Japan when you joined, and you would have?
No, because I heard so much about the 442 that had just been over there for a short period of time, but suffered heavy casualties, and we
Mhm.
were the first casualty group to go over there.
Oh,
But,
casually, the replacement group.
but when we were told to get aboard the train, before the train left the station, 7 of us young men were called off the train and said we would not be going, being that the government passed a law you had to be 19 to go overseas. And all 7 of us were 18 at the time. So the train pulled out and left us standing there,
Oh.
and we didn't know what they were going to do with us. And we were finally told we're waiting for a new unit to be formed that is just finishing their basic training. And
Mhm.
we will be offered different positions in the service. So I was sent to Dog Company, which was the first battalion of the regiment.
Mhm.
And they were the ones that convinced our government that when they were sent overseas to the European theater and suffered heavy casualties, that we would be loyal American citizens. Our government decided to reverse their opinion about the Japanese Americans. They didn't know enough about them, but they said they are loyal citizens. So they
Good.
reversed our calling, and we were back to A1 citizens, and we could all be drafted or volunteer for the services.
Oh, wow. Now, when you joined the army, were you an infantry guy at first, or were you
We
always a
had
machine?
no choice. When I told what choice I'd like to join, but they said, no, you're going to a special unit. And that's where we went. We had to join the 442nd,
Right.
made up of all Japanese Americans.
And so then Hitler offs himself. You get over there, and next thing you know, you're back
But
on a
we couldn't go with the group we trained with and all.
right.
So we were assigned to these different companies and had to undergo another basic training. And this time I was presented as a member of the heavy weapons platoon of 100th Battalion, which became the first battalion of the 442nd Regiment. And I was to be into a machine gun platoon and learn all about the heavy and light and heavy machine gun.
You know what? I bet if I put you in front of a Ma Deuce 50 cal right now, and if I gave you the head spacing, you could probably go in there and figure out the head spacing on that 50 cal still, couldn't you?
Well, you know, the platoon sergeant that we had training us on the machine gun talked about and showed us how to dismantle both the air cool and the water cool machine gun.
Mhm.
And we had to do it blindfolded.
Oh, wow.
And so he said, in order to pass this course, you have to know how to do it. And we all learned how to do it, put it together blindfolded.
Well, Hershey, I don't know if you can see it, but if you
Yeah,
come to Fort
yeah,
Worth, I'll let you field strip
that,
my
that's
1919 air
pretty
cooled
cool. We're air cooled.
machine gun. This is chambered in 308. I'll
Yeah,
gladly
oh,
let you field strip it just for old time's sake. And
yeah.
I mean, that thing weighs what,
Right.
30 some pounds. Oh my gosh. I have that machine gun for the little ferret, the armored
Well, I
scout car.
got my memo MOS as a heavy machine gun.
Oh, heavy. Okay.
So I took my basic 13 weeks this time.
Hmm. And so when you came back from Europe, uh, if I
Now,
remember
wait a
right, you
minute.
stayed in
I
reserve, right?
haven't finished now.
Oh, okay.
When I underwent to finish the 13 weeks, we were told we're going overseas. And this time I made it as far as Fort Meade, Maryland. Before we boarded the ship, we were given a physical. And I was told I had a hernia and I needed to stay back and get it operated on. And the officer asked me if it bothered me. I said, no, sir. He said, well, you go back there, report to the hospital in Mississippi, Camp Shelby, Mississippi, and they'll fix you up.
Yeah.
Which I had to do, so I went back to Camp Shelby. I missed the boat again. I was in the hospital with, finishing up on getting rid of my hernia. And then I was told I would rejoin another group that just finished basic training. And
Right.
this time I made it to the ship. And 5 days out of Naples, Italy, we heard that the war in the European theater was over. That's when we said, are we going to the Pacific? And I said, yes, we're going to train for it. But before we got into the training, the war ended in the Pacific.
Wow.
So I eventually came home with the 442nd Regimental College. They distinguished themselves in battle, and we received a tremendous welcoming home. And it's something that most of us aboard the ship did deserve. We were all recruits, didn't see combat, but there were some combat vets with us.
Uh-huh.
So it was a mixture. Anyway, we welcomed home. We were welcomed home. And then we're told to march in review for President Truman.
Oh, that's
And which
so
we
awesome.
did. And he pinned another battalion streamer on the banner.
Uh-huh.
On and well, I said this is another citation for the unit. It's the seventh or eighth regimental unit that presidential signed the citation that they received. Then we were discharged in Fort Meade, Maryland. And upon the discharge, an officer asked all of us that didn't see combat, would you like to join the Army Reserve? And then we all said yes. Well, most of us did. We went home and picked up our lives again until 1949. I was met by my officer that wanted me to reenlist for another 3 years because
Uh-huh.
my first 3 years were up right to the date, June 20th. 1949, and I signed up for 3 years. The following
And
year, the Korean War broke out.
and you're probably like a whole ton of guys who came back from World War II who joined the reserves thinking, "Oh, nothing's going to happen. We just had the big one. I'm married. I need a couple extra
Very true.
dollars."
Very true. You don't know what to expect, especially during the Korean War, because it was an unexpected war,
Right.
a war that our government never believed would happen.
Right.
And it cost us very badly, dearly, because we were not prepared for that. But we learned a lesson that we had to always be prepared.
Well, I think MacArthur screwed that one up. He thought you were just going to march right through Korea and it would be done. And
We were
initially,
told
you guys
back
did.
home, I remember reading newspapers that this is not a war, it's a conflict. And you're going to be over there with Belly Club, that we figured. But when we got over there, it was a different story altogether.
Yeah.
That's when I was signed to a division when I reached Japan. Because my MOS called for the machine gunners over there, and they needed them very badly. They needed more than that.
Right.
When I joined the unit, and the first man to meet from the division was my friend Joe Nell.
I love Joe. You
And
you
we were
two you
meeting,
two
we
were
became
inseparable.
very good friends, and he knew all about the 442nd. He's a great guy. And he was still a young man, but he very knowledgeable about the division.
Now Joe was kind of a pseudo history guy, wasn't he? Because he was always quoting things that happened back in the Roman times and the Legion, different
Well,
things like that.
he just so generous and uh, everything about him. You would want someone like him as a friend.
Uh,
You could
well,
depend on him. No, he's such a great guy.
so you joined the 3rd Infantry Division with Joe, and if I had my notes right, you hit in November of 1950. You hit Korea. I so when you went to Korea, let's put it this way: you went to Korea. You guys had routed the North Koreans back north.
Well, not immediately. We did up until a point where General MacArthur became the commander, and we told him that the Chinese were massed along the North River of the boundary between North and South Korea, North and South Mongolia
Hmm.
as a border, and we saw nothing but Chinese soldiers. And he said, "Don't worry, they won't come across."
Yalu River.
When he
Sure.
said that, there was already 3 divisions that had crossed and were overrunning, ambushing our troops at Chosin Reservoir, and we suffered heavy, heavy losses. And our own division suffered heavy losses covering their retreat. And then we were given the orders we were going to evacuate. But when we arrived in North Korea, we were not prepared to fight that war.
No, the cold was brutal,
We
wasn't it?
didn't have the equipment, we didn't have the clothing, and the young men were mostly 16 to 18 years old
Hmm.
and suffered so much as a soldier during the winter months there.
Well, if you could, do you? eh, People think, okay, machine guns. Oh, just throw it over here or throw it over there. What sort of considerations did you have as being you and Joe as being the squad leaders or platoon leaders for the machine guns in setting up the fields of fire? What kind of considerations did you have
We,
to take
we,
into
we
account?
went, we did, they didn't prepare us for anything when they went into combat because they didn't know what to expect.
Hmm.
or how to counter their attacks. Because we didn't really have the equipment to defend our units properly. They had superior weapons and all. And that's one of the reasons that why we lost so many men. In fact, we had so many cases of frostbite in this 40 and 50 below zero weather that the commander said if the next man comes in with frozen feet, it's going to be court-martialed.
Huh.
So I don't know how it turned out, but I didn't get court-martialed because I kept my toes and hands moving all the time. I didn't want them freezing. But we evacuated North Korea in December, and our unit was picked to cover the defensive and set up defensive positions while everyone that wanted to go south was
Right.
on that one road that led south. And there were hundreds of ships waiting to pick us up. And
So everybody understood. So that
Yeah.
everybody understands, you were leapfrogging backwards, setting up defensive positions with machine guns.
While the troops were boarding the ships.
Wow.
And they said, we don't board until every man is aboard the ship. Plus 100 North Korean civilians that wanted to evacuate with them.
Wow. Lucky to get out of there.
And they finally did make it out. And they did before we blowed all these rations up. You could go in there and pick whatever you wanted to eat.
Mm-hmm.
And we did that. And once we were aboard ship, we heard a lot of explosions, and we knew that they were setting those supplies off that should have gotten to us, but never did. Because of the type, the conditions of the roads, the snow, the cold, it just hampered both sides.
You know,
So
we have
all of us didn't freeze to death because we weren't prepared. Have the clothing even for that type of weather.
we have one of our Marines in our group, Lieutenant General Carey, was a lieutenant at the Chosen, and he told the story about the frozen Tootsie Rolls, and they had called back. They needed Tootsie Rolls, but that was the code word for mortars, and so the Army guy or the Marines went and rounded up every box of Tootsie Rolls, or I think they were Army or Air Force, didn't understand the code word, and they went to the PX and bought every box of Tootsie Roll they could get, and they went and parachuted them in. The guys were like, "These are Tootsie Rolls," and they realized, oh, they don't understand our code word for mortars. But it turned out because it was so cold, they could sit there and suck on those things, and they survived on nothing but the sugar rush of Tootsie Rolls. Just amazing story.
Getting into our sleeping bags to pull guard duty once we had our defensive position set up.
Right. Jeez. And it's not like and so when the Chinese attacked, what was that experience
I
looking
was
at your
watching. I happened to become a squad leader in between that time we got up there. And when I got up there, I was told not to fire on them because they didn't know what they were going to. We didn't know what they were going to do yet.
right.
But like I say, 3 divisions of their troops already crossed over into the Chosen, and I was still with my squad on the east side of the Chosen Reservoir. And we were told to get off the mountain because they started crossing that frozen river to the southern part of South Korea. And I found out that a lot of them didn't even have weapons. They were carrying wooden rifles made of just plain wood, making believe that each one of them were holding a weapon, but not on that weapon.
So if they were wounded or they fell, the next guy would pick up the real rifle and charge on like the Soviet style fodder. Did as you were up there in your book, you described seeing the Chinese coming over, and it looked like ants, entire army
That's the
ants.
way it looked to me.
Yeah, just
Then
amazing.
what made it worse is our own Navy Corsairs started strafing my position because we were so far up north that
Right.
they thought we were the enemy. In those days, we did not have color codes that they used to put up showing the different units were in different positions in the South Korean.
Wow.
That's where they learned to do that.
So were you standing up, giving them the fist?
Yeah. Oh, that was something that, I mean, it's hard to describe. I can't blame it all on the people that were in charge, but it was so different type of warfare that we've never fought before.
Yeah, I guarantee it, and don't want to go there. I mean, I've done the hot stuff, but 40 below is not something you can operate in. You can't even take your glove off to squeeze the trigger on your rifle.
We found out that if you had oil on your weapon, if it was closed, it would stay closed until you warmed it up to free it up again.
Wow.
That's how cold it was.
Put your canteens
And for
inside of your
food, we
parkas, keep
never
your
got
water.
any hot food for over a week at a time.
Right.
It's,
You're
this is
dreaming of a hot shower sometimes, right?
oh, shower was out of the question.
So you evacuated on the ship and you got out of Korea. Then they brought you back in for.
Well, they sent us to Busan. All the ships landed in Busan, which is the southernmost seaport in South Korea. And we immediately disembarked, told to grab new weapons or whatever clothing we need to had parkas, but by then,
Mhm.
and we fitted this, and we boarded trucks that were waiting because the enemy was still on the outskirts of Busan.
Wow.
So we had to fight our way back up to the 38th parallel again. And that became every 2 weeks, we would have to dig in. Every 2 weeks, we made an assault until it came to April. And we were told they're getting ready for a spring offensive. So
Mhm.
we had to be ready for them.
Now, was
And
there
that's
still
when
snow up on the mountain at that time?
they started their spring offensive. I mean, there are all the units crossed over, and we met most of them. I was in a position near Engine River, south of the Engine River, up in the mountain. Joe was down in the flat, and that was in April 24th, 1951.
In 51. And so that was the Kansas City or the Kansas line you guys described. You described it as the Kansas line in your book that you all had to hold.
Oh yeah, we had to just do what we had to do to protect ourselves because we were being overwhelmed with troops, their troops. I didn't know exactly what Joe was doing because it got pretty hot there, and I could see my troops would all be killed or captured, so I had to make a decision, and I decided to have them go back to the rear air echelon and find out what they wanted to do.
Get reemplacements or
I had to hold the position at any cost, so that's the decision I made. And I
for
had to fight off as I made mine. And what made me decide it was time to get off of that mountain was when our own company started dropping the White Fortress bombs on my position.
Oh, because they thought everybody was gone or dead at that time, right?
Yeah, they had all left by then.
Wow. You know, for those that don't know, he had thousands of Chinese attacking.
No, I didn't have any doubts at all. I just had an agreement with the Lord that if He guided me through this, I'll forever remember this day, which I
Right.
always have ever since I've come back to Gallup to live as a civilian. I remember what I was doing, and I was just felt I was doing the right thing.
Well, you did. You did, Hershey, and your men, the last they saw of you was single-handedly manning both positions until one machine gun jammed, and then to the other machine gun until it ran out of ammo. And then you grabbed your M1 with a fixed bayonet.
The main one had to go man the main water-cooled machine gun.
Yeah.
But it jammed on me because it's a two-man operation.
Mm-hmm.
And he wasn't, I hate to say, but he wasn't anywhere around. So I jammed the gun and put a grenade underneath the breech and blew it up. Then I went back to the second gun, air-cooled gun.
Yeah, well, the last your men saw of you when they evacuated
I don't
was
know what
you.
they did because my mind wasn't on them anymore.
Oh, no, no. From their reports were watching you as they
Yeah,
evacuated,
well,
covering their back and taking care of them, and that
they
was the
told
last
me
they ever saw of you.
later. They told me later. The whole squad, more or less reported what I was doing, but I didn't know that. I just felt I did what I had to do. That's all.
Well, the crazy thing is they thought
I,
you were dead.
well, I don't know. It didn't enter my mind.
No,
I
but they
didn't
thought you were
get into
dead.
my
Everybody
mind
thought
that
you had perished.
it didn't get into my mind that I'd become a POW either.
Right.
But
So you survive this, and you almost make it all the way back to American lines when you get
almost
captured by
like
the
that.
Chinese.
See, there is a road down there that I knew we came up on.
Mm-hmm.
What I didn't know is that they had strung barbed wire across that road.
Oh,
And I ran into it because it was still dark enough that you couldn't see. What caught my attention was the tanker that started up his engine. That told me he's going to leave. And I was waving at him, but he couldn't see me because it's still dark enough. He really couldn't see. And that's when I ran into that wire and they cut me all out. But I dropped to my knees, called on my belly until got across and ran about 50 yards or so. And I passed out
yeah.
because I came down a hill about 300 yards with troops chasing me. And
And at that time, you're wounded as well with hand grenade fragments in your legs, severe
well, I
shrapnel.
didn't even know I was wounded in the leg, and I got that from a grenade, believe it or not, in one
Yeah.
of the trenches on my way down, where this soldier, Chinese soldier, and I met face to face as we turned the corner.
Uh huh.
I recognized him right off, and I struck him with my bayonet. And when I pulled out, I shot him because he was about twice my size. I
Wow.
figured I better be sure he's had it. And I fell backward. That was taught. Were taught that during my first basic. We
Hmm.
were taught how to use a bayonet. That's how I knew how to use a bayonet. But I wanted to be sure he was dead when I pulled out my rifle. And but I didn't know he had a grenade in his hand.
Oh,
They have what they call the concussion grenade, and it dropped on my foot and went off. Luckily, because I was so low, the blast went up like at a 45-degree angle, and
hmm
just a piece hit me in the leg, my right leg.
mm.
But I didn't know it because by then, the adrenaline was going.
Right.
Didn't think about anything but getting out then back to the unit, and that's where I was headed.
Well, when you got captured, you
When
were
I got
reunited with Joe,
when I
right?
got captured is when I heard troops go by me, but I didn't move because I didn't know whether they were our troops or the enemy. So when the noise died down, I looked around. I did see. I heard a voice in English say, "Get up, you're my prisoner." And when I turned around, he had a pistol pointing at my head.
Oh,
And he said, "We have a lenient policy. We won't harm you. Get up and follow me." That's when I found out I was wounded, so I decided I better follow him. He might just shoot me if I didn't. So
yeah.
I followed him, and he led me to where Joe and Nels and his troops were, and his men were all shot up. He lost
Mm.
one, but Joe was hurt the worst. And we were told were to follow their troops, and as they advanced, we advanced with them. And when
Right.
they collected enough prisoners of war, they would let us know, and we would head towards our POW camp. Up until that time, we were not given any food or medical attention. For 2 weeks, we had to follow them.
So you're on the
And
Bataan
then
Death March up north, pretty
they
much.
came to us and gave us each a sack about 2.5 inches feet long, 2.5, 3 inches thick, and said, "This is your rations for a week. And if you finish sooner, you're going to have to do without." And that's what happened. They gave us a sack, but they told us how to use it. But they didn't say, where do we get the water? And there was no water in sight. So we had to drink water from streams that were not supposed to be drunk from because we knew they were polluted. They
Right.
were, you know, well, a lot of us got dysentery on our
Oh,
march up. And then a lot of the young boys said, we cannot eat that food. It was powder, a fine powder. And you gulp it down with a handful of water behind it. And when you hit your stomach, you're going to feel full. But we never did get that chance to try it because we were always on the move.
right.
We had to walk, follow them for 2 weeks, and then turn around and start marching towards our camp. And how we didn't lose more men, I'll never know. And I don't know how I survived that march.
Well, your book does a really awesome, incredible job talking about the loss that you felt when Joe was so gravely wounded. He realized I can't make it, and he was holding you down. You were carrying Joe. You two were carrying each other, but finally Joe couldn't take it anymore, right? So Joe and Nello kind
You
of,
know, I didn't realize he could take so much pain.
yeah,
He was injured a lot worse than he said he would. I didn't realize that. But when he told me he had to have help to walk, I was the only one left. We were to bring up the rear, and we both hobbled. He wasn't that heavy when I first met Joe. We were both the same weight, 145, 150.
Wow.
But anyway, we were starting to lag behind because Joe was to say, I just have to rest a little bit. And on the last rest, the interpreter came up to us and said, "You're slowing the troops. You have to leave him here." I said, "He's wounded." I said, "Yeah, I know. They will pick him up." So I knew if I left him, that'd be the last time I saw him. So
Yeah.
he said to go, and then my thoughts were all about him on the way up to the camp because I wondered if he made it all right. And after we got back together, he told me all what happened and all.
I mean, it's such a glorious story when you read the book and he gets left behind, but he ends up getting picked up and put onto a wagon. He gets taken to
Well,
a prisoner of war camp.
yeah,
A pilot
they
escapes.
really had to scrounge for food. We
Right.
had food, but I don't know if you'd call it food. That fine powder,
Yeah. But it was amazing that the Army.
ground up rice, sorghum, and millet.
Oh,
Consistently, about the consistency of talcum powder or more.
right.
That's how fine it was.
Well, it was amazing he escaped and was able to rejoin the troops because of the rescue attempt that the Army sent tanks and planes up to where he was and was able to find him. You, on the other hand, you spent 28 months as a POW. Can I ask you something? I know during World War II, the
See,
history of
now we were split, Joe and I. He was lucky enough to get freed by our own troops, but
right.
I had to go to one of these camps. And I don't know which was worse. Well, they made it back all right, but they didn't have anything to eat or anything for days.
Well, I was wondering, being of Japanese descent but not speaking Japanese,
You
did
know,
the
we would
Koreans?
stop for the day at every little village, and the people there would gather around me and pointing fingers at me. They knew I was Japanese. How I know, I don't know, because they would be pointing to me, and they knew I was Japanese, but I don't know how they found out. But the guards kept them away.
Did you find the treatment by the Chinese be as more harsh because of maybe the treatment, the Japanese history in the
They
Pacific in World
didn't
War
have to
II?
be harsh with us because they already didn't treat us.
Hmm.
They didn't give us any medical attention for all the wounded. I saw wounds heal by themselves on the march up. Wounds that you would not believe the person would be alive today or
Yeah. Oh,
would make it out alive. And he did.
yeah. You told that story about the young
So many
soldier who was shot,
people.
and the maggots were eating the dead
Oh, yeah.
flesh, and it healed it.
I saw all those maggots, I said, this man has had it. Now, someone told me, no, these maggots ate all that poison and they drop off when they get too full and they just clean the wound.
That's amazing.
It's amazing how they clean that wound, eating all the raw poison.
Flesh.
You learn so much being a POW.
So
Learn
as
that if you give up, you'll never make it. Like 6 of those young men said they couldn't eat this food. They didn't want to eat it. They didn't make it either.
hmm.
But the ones that did try it, and they kept going, and they did make a lot of them made it. And that was because they would try anything to keep alive.
Now, did they have a bunch of working parties for you to do on a daily basis as a
Yeah,
POW?
they went by the size of you. The bigger you are, the more you carry. And
Mm,
we had to go out and walk about 4 or 5 hours just to get to a wooded area or timber area because trees are very scarce in North Korea.
right.
And they said that if the civilian was caught cutting a tree, you would have to pay a big fine. But anyway, that was our job. Each man had to bring in so many pounds or kilos of wood because that's what it's going to take you to survive the winter months here. So that's what we did. We went out, cut the wood, carried it back, and I was no condition to be doing that. And it just as if it was meant to be, but the commander said, we need a company barber because we didn't know it, but our group was undergoing uh, lessons about their troops and our troops coming to some kind of agreement that they
Mhm.
would exchange prisoners, and we didn't know this, but we thought that would brighten us up, and it did. We started looking forward. They said, whenever you hear your name called out, you will be going home within a week. That
Wow.
went on until there were 25 of us left. And we were all wondering if we were going to be called. And finally, that day came August 20th, 1953. And that's when we rode partially by train and then by truck and made it to Panmunjom, which was the center of where the 30th parallel was.
Hmm.
And when I first saw that Stars and Stripes, I thought that was the most beautiful sight I ever saw.
I bet you gave a big salute and some tears in your eyes when you saw the American flag there.
Oh, yeah. And then we were deloused first, then given showers, we bath
Oh,
pajamas and bathrobes, and told to lay down on these cots that were lined up out there and rest. And so we lying down on the cots, and the sergeant came up to me and said, are you such and such a person? I said, yes. He said, well, there's a man that wants to interview you and follow me. And I followed him into another tented area.
uh-huh.
Didn't know what was going on. So, but I did see the 3rd Division Commander General standing at a table on the opposite end of the tent and wondered what the heck is happening. And when I reported to him, he said, do you know you were to receive the Medal of Honor? Or you received the Medal of Honor for your actions on April 24th, 1950? I said, no, sir. 51. He said, can you relate that story to us? What I could remember is I reported it to you. How I went through all this, I'll never know. Because I'm not the type to even talk to anybody, especially let alone a room full of cameramen and
Right.
reporters. I mean, I was just overwhelmed, but I was just as calm as could be. I don't know why. But I knew all I could say is what? That's it. And I thought I was just doing what I was trained to do.
And you did.
I wasn't trying to become a hero. So that was it. And he said, well, you got a choice. You can go back by ship, which would take 19 days, or you can go by plane, jet, like jet plane. I said, I think I'll take the ship because I only weighed 98 pounds when I got released. And I said, I'd like to put on some weight before I get out.
Sure.
But that was a big mistake. Even though I crossed the Atlantic to Europe and back, the roughest sea, Japan Sea, I never got sick. I didn't figure I'd get sick at all. But I was sick 11 days out of the 19. I couldn't even get out of that bed.
Oh,
I
that's
was
miserable.
so weak. And I thought I have to get some air. Because ventilation is terrible on the bottom of the ship. And just the smell of it and all. They let me up on the board, sit on top, and they kept us isolated from the rest of the troop. All those killed others, and they said the reason being that the FBI wants to interrogate each one of us. And I said, what for? Because of the 21 that refused repatriation at the end of the war. 21.
21.
And one of those 21 was a guy from our unit, our company.
Oh.
And when it came down to trying to analyze why he was one, he was just a loner. He never was a guy that talked a lot. He's always by himself.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't know what he was up to, so we left him alone. And he was telling the commander what we were talking about because they were trying to brainwash all of us. We had the whole discussion on the material that was given to us. And it was all Russian propaganda. And he will report to the commander. They changed 3 interpreters in our group, and they finally gave up. They said, no, these guys are not.
You guys are not Jedi
open.
worthy. We can't brainwash these guys.
Yeah. Well,
You know,
anyway, we had no longer, we didn't have to hold seminars and to talk about the communism.
hey,
Well, they couldn't even practice it.
hey, Hershey, years ago, Leo Thorsness, who was a POW in Vietnam, we were talking about his experience, and I asked him, what was the first thing you said to your wife when you got home? And Leo said, I thought about that for a long time. I had a lot of time on my hands. He goes, when I came across the tarmac and I gave my wife a hug, I said, hey, sorry, or hey, babe, sorry I didn't call. I was a little tied up. So the humor in that was pretty funny, but dark humor. But what was the first thing you said to your beautiful wife, Terry, when you got home?
I can't tell you that because I
Oh,
don't really remember anything about. All I remember is being allowed to be the first off the gangplank. And
uh-huh.
as I was walking down the gangplank, I saw my wife and my father and a couple of my sisters. And I just thought how lucky I was to come back to see them again. That's all I remember.
Yeah.
I had no words for them at all. Yet they were the ones that helped pull me through all that time, talking about things that meant a lot to you or what you did. And our subject always ended up in food. Which,
Food.
I never, I never was a cook and never liked to cook, but I didn't realize so many of these young men carried recipes of what they like and all,
Uh-huh.
and they were exchanging recipes. But that's what helped us through those 28 months.
That's amazing.
Having something in common, talk about it. But if you didn't have anybody, I don't think you would have made it.
No. Well, let's fast forward. You get home and now you're a recipient. So you've been awarded it. You have to go receive it from President Eisenhower. What was it like going
Well,
across country to
you
receive the
know,
Medal
I
of Honor?
was told to report to Fort Bliss, Texas, and receive my discharge there. That's where I entered the service in
Hmm.
World War II. But the commander was such a great man, and he said, "We're going to pass a parade in review for you because you deserve
Oh,
it." And that was quite an honor.
yeah, it
And
is.
they filmed it all and gave me a tape of it, real. And I also got a letter from the White House.
Uh-huh.
When I opened it, it said, "Please be at the White House on October 27th. You will receive the Medal of Honor from President Eisenhower." And when I read that, I said, "My God, I'm going to receive the medal from the highest ranking general in World War II." He was commander of all the forces in Europe during World
Sure.
War II, and all the commanders felt very highly of him. And to receive the medal from him was an honor in itself.
Yeah. And what
And
was
he made
you?
it. I know there was seven when we got to Washington. There were seven of us to receive the medal at the same ceremony.
Hmm.
And when we got up there, we all exchanged thank yous and all meetings for different members. And I didn't know you could. I could have invited all my family members, but anyway, I was under a spell. Like I was so wrapped up or so nervous about being there with the president and receiving a medal from him that I don't recall anything that happened during that. We were given a week with a car and an officer to take us around wherever we wanted to go. It was quite an honor.
Oh, that's incredible.
Uh,
Oh gosh. So you get the nation's highest medal for valor, and of course they couldn't announce it to anybody because the Chinese, if they found out how
I
many
would
how
be
many people you had dispatched, they
That's
probably would have
why
shot you on the side of the road.
that was the reason they said that you kept it a secret. But they also kept it a secret about another person that was a POW too, and he was General Dean, commander of the 24th Division. But I believe, now I'm not mistaken, if I'm not mistaken, he received the uh, Medal of Honor for his services. And there was another fellow by the name of Stone from Texas that I
Mm.
believe received the Medal of Honor without being told about it then. He was told about it soon afterwards, but I was never able to get together with him because he was in active service and he said always overseas somewhere. So
Sure.
no one ever got to talk with him.
So
And
were you given the choice or chance to stay in the army?
I was almost to stay in the army. I had the pen in my hand now. I was going to sign up for another 3 years. And then I got to thinking, no, I think I'll try civilian life again. I always wanted to do something that I was meant to do, so I said, no, I passed it up. I always feel from then on that whatever happens, happens for a reason.
Right.
If I had signed up, no telling where I'd have been sent. I wouldn't have ever had my 3 children.
Sure.
I wouldn't have a lot of things I have today. And, I still believe so strongly in that there's a reason for everything happening. And I decided once I get into back home, I'm going to try to find a field that I'd be more happy in. I like auto mechanics, but I wasn't crazy about it because to me, I could see that it was a lot of hard work and I didn't get the proper pay for it. So I thought there must be an easier way.
So what did you end up doing for your career?
Well, one of my friends that I met at the civilian, because there were 13 that came from New Mexico, and they were all Bataan veterans. They were captured by the Japanese during World War II. Some received harsh treatment, some others didn't. But we all got along real fine. And I said, I told each one of them that I think I'm going to try to find another field to get into. And that was about it. And they tried to help me as the best they could. But they were a great bunch of people. My growing up was the happiest times I had in my life because we all got along so well.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, tell about the reunion with you and Joe. That was my favorite part of the story. How you
Uh,
two get together and hug each other. I thought you were dead. No, I thought you were dead.
oh,
It
yeah,
was
I
so
really
Google.
did. We both thought the same thing because it was so common that we heard that they didn't want prisoners and they would shoot, the prisoner before taking him. But that wasn't true. It was some of the most injured prisoners they probably shot and all. But
And Joe was pretty injured at the time, so you just assumed they were going to shoot him as soon as
yes,
you rounded the
that was
bend.
the attitude we all had. So
Yeah.
uh, when they walked through that door, I couldn't believe my eyes because I saw him when I left him. He was laying down and like all life was gone out of him.
Right.
And to see him walk through that door, I just couldn't believe. And Joel just didn't think I had made it all the way because my condition.
Sure.
So we both were thinking the same thought. And we were such good friends that it's just hard to explain.
Yeah. Well, I love the interaction between you and Joe. Every year, you would either bring Joe or you'd bring Ken as your escort. And I just always had a great time watching the interaction between you two and the
Well,
other recipients and the young escorts that you were with. They loved it. As a matter of fact, I've got a picture of Nick, you, and Joe. Nick Lehman's a buddy of mine out there in New Mexico. And
that is Joe. But
yep, there's Nick Lehman's a friend of mine. He's out in New Mexico there. And of course, this
do
is a
you have
great
the name
picture.
of that person in the center between Joe and I?
Yeah, that's Nick. His name is Nick Lehman. And then here's a picture of you and Ken
Yes.
in one of the UE helicopters flying there at Skyball.
Uh-huh.
And
Well, Ken was he was the one that helped me so much to get back.
yes,
said
And I
with
know
that.
you're a proud grandfather of an Air Force officer. There's your granddaughter and your beautiful wife
Well, we
Terry
had
sitting there.
two Air Force officers
Two.
graduate from the Air Force Academy,
Oh
and
wow.
our youngest sister's youngest son became an Air Force Academy graduate. So there are two of them. He made it to Lieutenant Colonel, got out because they said they froze the pool Eagle.
Right.
So he said 22 years was all he was going to spend. And he's doing well as a civilian, right? So
Oh,
I
that's so
think he
awesome.
made the right choice. And hopefully my granddaughter made the right choice. I told her to stay with the unit or stay in the unit
Sure.
because I believe that's the best for her and they won't regret it, I hope.
Well, I tell you, you always reminded me of the Karate Kid, Mr. Miyagi, who was in the Karate Kid. Do you remember that movie that came out in the 1980s?
But I didn't quite understand that.
Do you remember a movie called The Karate Kid?
Karate
And
Kid?
yeah, and the
Yeah.
mentor, his name was Mr. Miyagi, and
Oh, yeah.
he was part of the 442nd, and he had received the
That's
Medal of
right.
Honor
That's right.
in the movie, in such a unassuming uh, man of his stature, and here he is taking out everybody. So saving his buddies' lives and doing stuff. I always thought of you as kind of Mr. Miyagi. Just
No, he was a
I'm
good
sorry.
actor. He was a
Yeah, I
good
figured they based it on you, Japanese American, fought 442nd Medal of Honor, but not from Europe. But they just kind of kibosh everything in there.
Well, in a way, I feel that our government had to make a lot of choices. Some they regretted having to make, and what they did in the outcome of it. But I believe everything worked out all right,
Yeah.
and I think that was really the best part of it.
Well,
The
I'm proud of Gallup for what they do for you. I am proudly sporting your high school shirt named after you, your high school up there in Gallup, and I am
I'm so happy that the students are glad they attended the school, and so many of them have gone on to learn more. And
well. You
that's
do a great
a good feeling.
you do a great service for all of us, for all of the speeches and all of the things that you attend, and pass on words of wisdom. Is there anything else that you would like to say? Because I've kept you for an hour, and we probably have to let you go have dinner. But what anything that you want to pass to last final word, save round?
Well, I believe that a person that learned about a God should believe there is a God, because I found out that to me, there is a God, and I actually feel that, and I firmly believe he helped me through my times in Korea, and
Yes,
he's
sir.
with me even today. That's why I'm going to be 97
In October, we're going to celebrate.
I
That's so
blame it
awesome.
all on him because I surely did do it all on my own.
Well, you know what, Hershey, I believe the same. There are God points in life that take us in certain directions, but they're there for a reason. And I truly believe that myself. So, we are who we are because of higher power and a plan. And there is a plan, whether that plan ends right now or it ends 50 years from now, there is a plan in place. I hope, can people buy your book on Amazon? Because you
Well,
gave me this copy.
it's been out a while and it hasn't very well. So I'm very proud. But my only regret is that the author has passed on since then, and he was also up for a grade jump from DSC to the Medal of Honor.
Oh, really?
Yes, I read his citation, and to me, it almost like reading Audie Murphy's citation.
Audie Murphy's right.
Yes,
What about Senator Daniel Inouye? I believe. I mean, he passed in about 2012. I think I met him on one of the Medal of Honor flights we had.
yeah, but I don't know much about him except that he was a good leader,
Mhm.
and the men under his command always didn't have anything against him, or I just didn't hear much about anything. He
Yeah.
all we that were in the 44200 Battalion didn't look upon him as one of us because he would never attend any of our doings or celebration. He ought to always say that he was not deserving of it. Oh, and but if that's the case, I feel that way too. But
Yeah.
the rest of the men that looked for him to attend some of the doings of the regiment would help the regiment, but he just never did come out.
Oh, that's nuts.
You know,
Well,
so I don't know enough about the senator because he just never talked to us at all.
well, I know he
No,
was from Hawaii. I know he was from Hawaii, and there was actual confrontations between the Hawaiian Japanese and the mainland Japanese, right? When you
yeah,
first
what?
joined.
Yeah, it's quite a competition because the 100th Battalion is made up of men mainly from the island of Hawaii.
Uh huh.
They're the ones that instigated the forming of a unit to be sent to battle to be tested, and finally convinced our government to let a battalion go overseas. And when they did, they suffered heavy losses. And the commander wrote back and said, "We need more of these young men."
Right.
And that is when they reversed the decision from 4C to A1 again, and were able to ask for volunteers as well as draft some of them,
Wow.
and even ask for volunteers from these relocation camps where the member was held a prisoner there, and the many of them volunteered from that camp.
Right.
And so I
Well,
think we proved ourselves to be, but that goes back to the time that this country was started, and
sure.
how it has flourished all these years because of the type of government we had, the, and the people we had at that time that believed and worshipped in God. Because there were churches every town that you could think of, at least one or two churches there honoring God.
Yes, sir.
And I believe that is what made this country what it is today.
Well, we definitely need more of that. That is for certain. Leadership. We need fathers. We need families, and we need God back in our country. Well, Hershey, I cannot thank you enough for joining me, and I'm going to have this as a cornerstone memory highlight to be sitting here talking to you. Uh, this is really special. I want to say thank you again so
Oh,
much.
well, I want to thank you for recognizing me and all. And I know you've gone out of your way to try and help us, the middle honor society and its members.
Anytime, sir. You call, I haul.
And we thank you for all you've done for them. And that's because you got on out of your way in time to make sure we got what we wanted.
Oh, yeah. Well, you guys are the national treasures. And what I love is it's ordinary men who stepped up to do extraordinary things in a time
That
of
happens every
trouble.
day, every
Yes,
day,
sir.
Malcolm. There are people that are just waiting for their opportunity to show what they're made of.
Yeah.
And when if it's meant to be, they will get their day.
Well, thank you so much. Listen, I'm going to drop you off. I'm going to say goodbye to the folks.
Thank
I'll
you
be
for
right.
having me. Thank
Yes,
you for
sir.
having me.
If you hang out for just a minute, I'll be right back with you. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Talk to you in a second. Folks, I hope you enjoyed that. Hersey is just an incredible fella. Uh, if you get a chance, share it, like it, send it to your kids, let them check it out so that they can see, you know, like I said, an ordinary person who did extraordinary things in his life. And we all have that within us. Just got to find the chance. And when the opportunity arises, be that person. So until I see you next time, adios, hasta luego, sa wiedersehen, tschüss, sheshini, au revoir, domo arigatou gozaimasu, tanoshinde kudasai, ciao, arrivederci, tashikur, and das vidanya, bo Virginia, and everything else. We'll see you guys next Tuesday. Take care now.